Hey everybody! In today's video, I'm going to show you guys a few of my favorite exercises that will help you to strengthen your music theory, your ear, and your fretboard visualization skills. And for some of these exercises, you'll actually be able to do them away from the guitar, so you have no excuse for avoiding to try them. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. Okay, for these first set of exercises, I call these question and answer drills. And the main gist is to take a note or a chord and ask yourself a series of questions regarding the significance of this note or chord in the context of something else. For example, if I have the note B, I could ask myself a bunch of simple interval-related questions, such as, what is B the minor third of? Or what's a major sixth up from B? What is B the seventh of? What's the key signature of B major? And so on. So this is one of my favorite exercises to do, and it's a really easy one that you can try whenever you have a free minute of time. In fact, this is a drill that I like to do when I'm doing something like taking a walk. So for example, if I'm walking to the bus stop, I might ask myself these kind of simple interval questions. And I find that by doing this frequently, this has helped to make my interval recall really fast. But beyond just doing a random mixed bag of questions, another thing that I recommend trying is to ask yourself questions related to specific types of intervals. For example, major thirds. So you could pick a note, we'll say B again, and then you could ask yourself a question like, what's a major third up from B? What's a major third down from B? And once you've answered those questions, you can move on to the next note, C. And you could ask yourself the same thing. So what's a major third up from C? And what's a major third down from C? And so on. And once you've got all of those intervals down, then you could move on to say minor thirds, or you could move on to fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, and so on. Moving on, another thing that we could try is to ask ourselves these same question and answer drills, but in the context of chords. So you could try asking yourself questions like, what are the diatonic chords of B minor? What are the diatonic chords of B major? What would a 1-6-2-5 progression look like in the key of E? Or maybe, how do you spell a D flat major 7 chord? How do you spell it in its second inversion? So yeah, give these kind of questions a go. Personally, I'm a huge fan of these questions relating to chords, as I find that you can only benefit from working on this knowledge. So the faster and stronger you are at utilizing your chord knowledge, the faster and stronger you are going to be at composing music. So definitely focus on this kind of ability if you want to get good at that. Anyways, that does it for the brain games or question and answer games. Let's move on now to looking at some things that we can do on the guitar. Okay, for this next game, we're going to do something that's very similar to the first interval game that we played, which is where we took a note and tried to put it into context, analyzing its significance. Now, in this case, what we're going to do is essentially the same, but we're going to take the note and we're going to sing it. And what we'll do with that sung note is we'll try to put it into context by playing guitar chords and listening for where our sung note falls within the harmony of the chord. So for example, if I had the note B, I would try to hear this as a chord tone in a number of different kinds of chords. For instance, B could be the third of a G major chord, or B could be the 11th of an F sharp minor chord. B could be the 7th of a C major chord. B could be the 6th in a D6 chord, and so on. Anyways, when you all are doing this exercise, I want you guys to be cognizant of the chord tone that you're singing and its relationship to the chord itself. I find that if you can really pay attention to the specific interval that you're playing against the chord, that can give you a more rich understanding of the role that different chord tones have within the context of a chord as a whole. For instance, B, when I sing the 11th, B of an F sharp minor 11 chord, I find that by focusing on the 11thness of the tone that I'm singing, this helps me to really understand what the 11th's role is in the harmony. And so when I'm writing stuff, that kind of helps me to hear this kind of chord or extension without me necessarily even having to play the chord. I just kind of have a more intuitive sense of what an F sharp minor 11 or any minor 11 chord might sound like on the basis of practicing with an exercise like this. Anyways, yeah, I really recommend giving this one a go too. And let's move on now to looking at a couple of fretboard memorization games. Okay, up next I have two exercises that will help with note naming, and the first one is very simple. All we're going to do is say the names of the notes as we play. For instance, D, A, B, G, E, D, C, B. So what I was playing there was honestly pretty random, but the main thing that I was focusing on was just naming the notes. And when you're doing this, I find that it's better to play lines that are less scalar so that when you're trying to recall the notes, you're not using so much, or you're not so dependent on the notes that came before as a guiding factor in naming the next note. What you want to be able to do is just recall notes based on pure memorization. And if you can do that, that'll make you a little quicker on the draw. As for the next exercise, I recommend taking chord shapes and then trying to name the tones in the chord. So in this chord, we have D flat, A flat, C, and F. This is a good exercise because it'll train you in the same way that the first exercise did. It'll get you to name some tones and hopefully develop some sense of what the notes are on the fretboard. But this one also has the added benefit of helping with your chord knowledge. So because I read the notes aloud there, I was able to get an extra refresh on my understanding of what the tones are in D flat major 7 chord. So I guess when you're doing this exercise, also be cognizant of the types of notes that you're reading aloud so that you can get the double effect of helping to carve out the note names on the fretboard and also the strengthening of your knowledge of what tones or notes are actually in a chord. Finally, for one last tip that you guys can try with regards to this exercise, I recommend being fairly random in terms of where you play the chords along the fretboard and also the type of chord shapes that you're going to use. The reason being is that if we play different kinds of shapes on different spots of the neck, we'll be able to avoid any kind of habit formation in terms of the types of shapes and sounds that we might try with regards to our fretboard memorization. I find that if we can get into habits, that can kind of make things easier, and we want to avoid that. We want to have as much kind of novel challenge as we can get to make the exercise as dynamic and difficult as possible, because that's ultimately where we're going to get the most gain out of it. So, yeah. All right, folks, so there you have it. If you like this video, then please make sure to like, share, and subscribe as I put out a new video every single week. And if you want to support the channel, then please consider checking out my Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you guys will have access to some bonus content like guitar tabs, lesson notes, chord diagrams, and other goodies of that nature. And I should mention that the Patreon page also really helps me out as it allows me to get some bonus equipment to make these videos even better. Finally, I teach lessons through Skype, so if you want a private one-on-one lesson, then there's a link to my email address in the description below. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all in my next video. Bye.